Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on everything you wanted to know about AI and ChatGPT, but were afraid to ask. Now, this is our first AI and tech related webinar, and hopefully will be the first of many to come. So please do let us know if there are any specific areas you would like us to cover in our webinar series, and we will do our best to cover any popular topics. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Savita Mukherjee, and I'm the COO and co-owner of SJ Solutions. I've been in the tech and consulting industry for over 35 years and have more recently moved into pharmacovigilance. So without any further ado, we'll start the session. So when you hear terms like AI and ChatGPT, it can sound daunting, but today I'll show you how simple and useful these tools can be. Now I know there's been a lot of talk about AI, large language models, LLMs, and specifically ChatGPT. And there are lots of perceived barriers to entry that are stopping people from using this tool. What I want to do today is to take you on the first part of a journey to break down these barriers and to bring adoption of this tool closer to you. We'll cover how these technologies work, their relevance in pharmacovigilance, and practical ways to use them effectively. This session is planned to last about 30 minutes, and by the end of this session, you'll not only understand what these technologies are, but also how you can start using them safely and effectively. If you do have any questions, then please put them in the chat to this meeting or email me. I'll be sharing my email at the end of this session, and I'll come back to you later. Okay, so as I said at the beginning, there's been a lot of talk about AI recently, so let's start with the basics. Now, AI has evolved significantly over the years. Initially, it was rule-based, meaning that systems could only perform specific programmed tasks. Over time, with advancements in machine learning and deep learning, AI has become more sophisticated, learning from data to improve its performance. Now, let's look at the textbook definition of AI. Now, apologies, I'm going to read this out because it's very important that we highlight some of the key terms here. Now, AI refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines. AI systems can process information, learn from data, recognize patterns, and make decisions with minimal human intervention. Unlike traditional automation, which follows predefined rules, AI can adapt and improve over time through techniques such as machine learning and deep learning. In simple terms, AI means teaching machines to think and learn like humans, but without emotions. Now, let's move on from AI in general to something more specific, large language models, or LLMs, the technology behind tools like ChatGPT. Now, LLMs represent one of the biggest breakthroughs in AI, and that's why everyone seems to be talking about it now. That's primarily due to their advanced natural language processing capabilities. Let's look at the textbook definition of LLMs. Again, I'm going to read this out because I think it's very important that we highlight some of the key points that are being highlighted in this definition. So LLMs are advanced artificial intelligence systems designed to process and generate human-like text. They are trained on vast amounts of data and use deep learning techniques, particularly neural networks, to understand language patterns, context, and meanings. LLMs, such as GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers, are capable of answering questions, summarizing information, and assisting with various language-based tasks. So think of LLMs as a supercharged autocomplete trained on massive amounts of text. Okay, so AI is often misunderstood. It's not just automation. Rather, it's the ability of machines to simulate human-like intelligence. So let's look at the difference between automation and AI. So, automation follows predefined rules and instructions to perform repetitive tasks efficiently without deviation. It does not adapt or learn from experience. Whereas AI mimics human intelligence by analyzing data, recognizing patterns, and making decisions. Unlike traditional software, which follows explicit instructions, AI can learn from patterns and improve over time. However, it is not sentient. It does not possess human like reasoning or emotions. An example would be automation is your email's out of office reply, whereas AI is a chatbot that understands your customer's tone and adjusts its response. So you may ask, what's different to me using Google search? Well, large language models process vast amounts of text data and use this to generate human-like responses. GPTs, or generative pre-trained transformers, are a type of LLM designed to generate text based on input prompts. Now, Google search works by retrieving and ranking web pages. It presents information to you. However, ChatGPT generates responses based on learned data, making it more interactive and conversational. When you ask Google, it sends you to a web page. When you ask ChatGPT, it gives you an answer. Now, it should be noted that the landscape is constantly changing and the distinction is blurring, with some traditional search engines starting to offer integrated AI search. For instance, Google Gemini now integrates conversational AI into its search. Now, there are other GPTs available. I've already mentioned Google Gemini. There's Microsoft Copilot, Perplexity, but I will use ChatGPT for this webinar. Like most new advances in technology, whilst they are powerful, it's also very important to understand data privacy considerations. Your data can be used to train the model. So we need to be very careful about what data we share, and we all need to ensure that sensitive data is not input into public AI models. There are settings you can change to limit what is shared, but these options are changing regularly as the tools advance. There are closed versions of ChatGPT which don't use your data to train the model. Organizations and teams can also use enterprise settings to manage data securely. In terms of safe practice, use enterprise accounts for work-related data, consumer accounts for general queries. Always treat ChatGPT as public unless you're using an enterprise account. Now, let's talk about prompting. What is prompting? Now, prompting is a process of interacting with an AI model with text inputs. The way you structure your prompts significantly affects the quality of the responses you receive. Clear and specific prompts lead to better answers, so it's important we understand prompting techniques. Good prompting involves being specific, structured, and setting context. Poorly written prompts can lead to inaccurate responses. Using clear instructions and refining prompts iteratively can help achieve more useful AI generated content. Think of prompting as your conversation with AI. The better you ask, the better the answer. Now let's look at how we should address ChatGPT to get the best results. To get the most effective and relevant answers, think of ChatGPT as a specialist advisor rather than just a general AI assistant. The way you phrase your question helps guide the response. Here's how you do it. So, firstly, define the role clearly. To get a more expert level response, specify ChatGPT's role in your query. So in this example, rather than saying, tell me about risk management planning, you would ask, as a PV expert, can you explain the impact of GVP Module 9 on risk management planning? So here you're setting the role for ChatGPT. You're telling it to be a PV expert. Be specific about the context. So provide details, ensuring a more relevant and tailored response. So rather than saying, what are the challenges in PV compliance? You could ask, for a small to medium PV consultancy, what are the key challenges in ensuring compliance with user vigilance reporting? So here where it's all about setting the concept, setting the framework in which ChatGPT needs to operate. Our third tip, ask for a structured or actionable answer. So request a specific format to make the response easier to use. So rather than saying, tell me about QPPV responsibilities, you would ask, can you provide a bullet point summary of a QPPV's responsibilities? You're telling it to be specific in how you want the how you want the response provided back to you. So moving on, request the right format. So specify if you need a summary, an example, comparison, or pros and cons. So rather than saying, tell me about PV regulations, you would say, can you compare the PV requirements in the EU and the EUS and the US? Use follow-up questions for deeper insights. So build on previous responses to refine the information you receive, rather like having a conversation. So you would say, for example, you mentioned that signal detection is a challenge. So that would have been a previous question that you would have asked ChatGPT. And your response would be, can you elaborate on best practices for a small PV consultancy? And our final tip around addressing ChatGPT is that ChatGPT can act in different roles. It can act in different specializations. A quality manager for compliance, audits, and SOPs. As a pharmacovigilance advisor, providing regulatory updates, case best processing practices, or even as a business consultant, operational efficiency and resource management. So by framing your questions effectively, you ensure clear, concise, and valuable responses that are directly relevant to your needs. By being specific, structured, and contextual, you turn ChatGPT from being a generic chatbot into a valuable team member. Now, let's see this in action to understand how different types of prompts affect ChatGPT's responses. We will compare a vague prompt with a well-structured one, which produce different outcomes and will showcase good practices. So let's look at clarity and being specific. So an example of a poor prompt would be, tell me about pharmacovigilance. An example of a much better prompt would be, I need a summary of the key PV requirements for marketing authorization holders in the EU, focusing on risk management plans and periodic safety update reports. Why is this prompt good? It's good because it's clear, specific, ensures a focused response. The bad prompt is too broad and could result in a general overview instead of precise details that are needed. Now, if we compare the two prompts, and don't worry too much about the detail in these screenshots, this presentation will be available online after this presentation, so you can look at it in a bit more detail if you wish. But the first prompt gives a totally reasonable response, giving an overview of PV, key aspects and various processes. But the improved prompt asks a clear and specific question, which ensures a response focuses on areas such as risk management plans, PSURs, which are relevant to marketing authorization holders. Okay, let's look at another example. Using structured requests. An example of a poorly written prompt would be, what are the problems with pharmacovigilance? An example of a better prompt, could you list 5 key challenges in PV compliance and suggest solutions for each? Why is it better? Now, the structured prompt defines the number of challenges, it asks for solutions, making it actionable. The bad prompt is vague and it could lead to an unstructured or incomplete response. Again, let's look at the two prompts. The first prompt, as I said, is quite vague, so the response is essentially a long list with little structure. However, the improved prompt allows ChatGPT to add some structure around its response by not only listing 5 problems, but a proposed solution for each one. Okay, let's look at another example. Role-specific context. A bad prompt, explain signal detection. A better prompt, as a PV consultant, how should I explain signal detection to a client unfamiliar with the concept? Why is this better? The good prompt provides context. It's a PV consultant explaining to a PV consultant explaining to a client, and it leads to a response that's tailored to a non-expert audience. So let's compare the two prompts again. Now, the first prompt provides a perfectly reasonable response. However, you may be able to see that it talks about signal detection in general and also about signal detection theory across different sciences. However, our improved prompt gives ChatGPT context and it assumes a role as an expert in PV to answer the question. In this case, you can see it suggests you break down the answer into manageable areas, a simple definition, explaining why it's important, sources of safety data, etc. So quite a difference in answers there. Let's look at another example. Formatting and output control. A bad prompt, write something about QPPV oversight. A better prompt, can you create a short LinkedIn post, 100 to 150 words about the importance of QPPV oversight in EU pharmacovigilance? Why is this prompt better? The good prompt specifies the platform, in this case LinkedIn, the tone, in this case it's a short post, and the topic focus, and this will lead to a more useful response. Now, if we compare the two prompts, in the case of the first prompt, it has answered the question, which admittedly is quite vague, but it's answered it with a dump of information as you'd expect. All probably quite accurate, but not what we could use for LinkedIn. However, the second prompt has produced a concise post relevant for LinkedIn in a manner that's easy to understand and post. You can see that there's emojis and hashtags that have been added, which makes it a lot easier and ready to post. Now, this is a very popular use of ChatGPT at the moment and can sometimes help with writer's block when you need a catalyst to get you started on a post. Okay, let's look at another example. Asking for comparisons. So how does pharmacovigilance differ worldwide? Versus a much better prompt, compare the PV regulations of the EU and the US, highlighting any key differences in case reporting timelines and risk management plans. Why is it better? The good prompt narrows the scope to 2 specific regions and key aspects, leading to a more focused response. Now, if we compare the two prompts, and I think you can see a trend appearing here now, the first prompt, whilst it's provided a perfectly reasonable response, it's vague and it's not really using the power of ChatGPT. With the improved prompt, we are asking ChatGPT to perform some analysis and comparisons, and it's coming back to us with a focused response, and it's even formatted it in a table for easy comparison. Now, I hope you can start to see some really interesting benefits in terms of cutting down the amount of time we would typically spend researching this type of information. Okay, let's look at our final example, refining results. Now, this is a really bad prompt. That's not what I needed. Versus the last response was too technical. Can you simplify it for an audience with no PV background? Why is that second prompt better? Hopefully you're getting the flow of this. The good prompt provides constructive feedback, allowing ChatGPT to refine the response accordingly. And if we look at these prompts, so in this example, we are using ChatGPT's feedback loop, where it remembers your previous question and its own response. Here, you can start to refine the response by drilling down your follow up questions into specific areas. In the improved prompt, we're asking ChatGPT to simplify the previous response to make it more understandable to someone new to PV. And you may be able to see from the response that it's doing a good job in going back to basics. For example, saying, what is pharmacovigilance? Who oversees drug safety? How do you report side effects? You can also use this type of prompting to summarize articles, publications, and papers to help you get to grips with new topics. So, when you're prompting ChatGPT, the key is to give it direction and clarity. Think of it as briefing a colleague. The more context you provide, the better the output. So, if you want an expert level response, tell ChatGPT what role to play. For example, act as a pharmacovigilance specialist or a communications expert. Be specific about what you need. Where relevant, mention who the audience is or what format you want the answer to be in. You can ask it to structure the response in a certain way, like comparing options, listing steps, or summarizing key points. And if the first answer isn't quite right, don't start over. Just guide it by explaining what needs improving. That feedback loop is where the real value comes from. So now that we've understood, hopefully, how to talk AI, let's look at how it's helping out in our field. Now, in the last few months, I've attended quite a few industry conferences and seminars, and it's clear from the presentations and talks that AI is already transforming pharmacovigilance. It can assist in case processing, automate literature monitoring, enhance signal detection, and improve compliance efforts. AI is being used in regulatory intelligence monitoring in terms of keeping track of global safety regulations changes. It's also being used for AI-powered compliance tracking, i.e., matching company SOPs versus evolving regulatory frameworks. By automating routine tasks, AI allows professionals to focus on higher value activities. There are also early examples of multilingual case intake using voice to text translational AI. Now, as with any emerging technology, there are limitations and some buyer beware warnings. Now, AI is a powerful tool, but it's not always correct. It requires human oversight to ensure accuracy. AI can hallucinate, and this occurs when models generate incorrect or fabricated information. This is particularly important in pharmacovigilance, where accuracy is critical. Remember, AI doesn't know when it's wrong. It will always sound confident even when it hallucinates. So always verify AI generated content before using it in decision making. Always use your professional judgment as a filter. There are ethical concerns, such as bias in AI, and regulatory considerations must be addressed when using AI in pharmacovigilance. There are also frameworks and controls in place to ensure AI is used responsibly. For example, the AI Act is a regulation by the EU to govern the use of AI within its member states. This act has now passed into law early 2025, with PV software likely to be categorized as high risk AI. This act is significant as it represents one of the first major legal frameworks specifically designed to address the wide ranging implications of AI technology. And similarly, the FDA and the MHRA have issued guidance on AI in drug development and safety, with the drafts published in early 2025. Will AI replace human jobs? Now, this is a question that's always being asked. AI is more likely to augment jobs rather than replacement. While it can automate repetitive tasks, human expertise remains essential for interpretation, ethical considerations, and strategic decision making. The value of human insight is in interpretation, empathy, and context, things that AI cannot replicate. AI continues to rapidly evolve. Future enhancements will be in areas such as multimodal, not just text, but audio, images, video, natural conversations, improved contextual understanding, regulatory compliance, and industry specific applications. Now, there has been a recent growth in agentic AI workflows, and that is AI systems that can plan, take steps, and integrate with company systems, not just chat. Some PV tasks, like case intake triage, coding, duplicate detection, are already being piloted with semi automated AI in CROs and pharma. Organizations and individuals should prepare to integrate AI responsibly and effectively. So, my call to action to you is to start exploring AI tools now, even in small ways, just to stay ahead. So, to summarize what we've learnt, AI is a transformative tool, but human expertise is still necessary. Effective prompting and responsible AI use enhance productivity. Ethical considerations and validation are crucial. AI serves as an assistant, not a replacement. AI is not here to take your job, it's here to take your repetitive tasks. Be curious, experiment, and learn. That's how we grow with this technology. And remember, AI is a co pilot, it's not an autopilot. Use it wisely and always validate your results. Embrace AI and ChatGPT. It's here to stay. That brings us to the end of this webinar, and I do hope that you found it useful if you are new to AI and ChatGPT, particularly in the field of PV. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email, and my email address is on this slide. We will also be launching a newsletter focusing on AI and tech within PV. So please do keep an eye out for it. Please do keep an eye out for that on our website and our LinkedIn page, and be ready to subscribe. Thanks for your time today, and I hope you found this webinar useful. And let me know if there are any topics that you would like us to cover. But just before we go, there's one more thing I'd like to mention. That's right, ChatGPT was used to create some of this material. In fact, most of the images in this presentation were generated by ChatGPT. Thank you for your time once again. Have a good day.